A glacial epic approaches as all fight for survival. RMC claims the frigid territory as his domain, using his enigmatic abilities. Amidst an alien frozen metropolis, where all systems are deactivated, every vehicle halted, and critical bulletin arrives. Earth has entered a new ice age. Swiftly, the courageous reporter withstood the chill, his microphone icing with each moment. As he announced, worldwide temperatures would plummet further, relentlessly. But he implores the populace to remain optimistic. Clenching his fist, he displayed assurance. The administration hadn't abandoned its people. In these arduous times, unity would prevail. This resilient nation would conquer this formidable challenge. Just as he was about to share more encouragement, misinformation to pacify the populace. A complete, icebound aircraft crash landed amidst the city, obliterating the reporter and his entire team. A guy observed this closing shot of the ultimate newscast, provided by the sole surviving TV channel nationwide. He viewed it on a terribly frigid display. After that aircraft plummeted atop the last broadcasting company squad, the television ultimately dissolved to white noise. No further gloomy news reports on external events. The quarters of our hero, Han Feng, embodied someone who attempted to resist, but ultimately surrendered. He didn't even tidy the disarray of his meager remaining provisions. The vicinity surrounding his entryway is brimming with containers of worthless junk and diminishing supplies outdoors. An individual had been rapping forcefully and yelling his moniker frantically. Eventually, perceiving the relentless hollering of his appellation, Han Feng arose from his squalid, glacial dwelling, grabbed a metal rod enhanced with spikes, blood stains still apparent on its exterior, and headed to the entrance. Han Feng was emaciated. He wore the heaviest winter garments, but it couldn't repel the chill. He cautiously glanced through the Judas hole to identify the visitor. The sight surprised and intrigued him. It was a familiar woman. Before the glacial epic began, she also donned her warmest winter attire, but standing outside in the elements made her face crimson and her body tremble. Han Feng blushed as he opened the door. The woman's name was Hyena, and he wondered about her presence. Still gripping the bat, he invited her inside for warmth and safety. The outside world had become perilous. A chaotic domain. Hyena widened the doorway to enter Han Feng's comparatively secure chamber. In a flash, she seized him by the collar and pressed her lips to his. Her little hat tumbled with her swiftness. Han Feng was astonished but didn't recoil, and his face grew even more flushed. This intense and ardent kiss lingered excessively, in my opinion, but let the guy enjoy some smooching. Amidst a deserted corridor outside his residence, when they parted, both Han Feng and Hyena gasped for air, their tongues extended, saliva trickling. The apocalypse is near, and they're occupied with this. Completely reasonable, grasping the recent event. Han Feng withdrew and inquired about this woman's behavior, that shed abruptly grab and kiss him the instant he opened the entrance. Still attempting to regain her composure, she admitted a revelation, that Han Feng was her true love. For this entire duration, moisture welled in her emotive eyes, claiming he was her destined partner. True character emerges in hardship, revealing genuine affection, unwavering support through adversity. Talking about tough times, Yona aimed to validate her words, guiding Han Feng's hands to her bosom to sense her racing pulse. She vowed to go to any lengths for their union. The term anything obliterated all logic in his mind. Every warning sign became a green light. To finalize the agreement, Hyena pressed her legs against Han Feng's manhood, rubbing and drawing him near. He was utterly defenseless. The world may be frozen and resources scarce, but his temperature soared. Something was stirring in the depths below. Han Feng gazed directly into Han Feng's eyes as she softly stroked his face. He admitted her words meant everything to him, but the doorway was an inappropriate spot to continue. Hyena quietly hushed him to silence. She only desired Han Feng to shut his eyes and embrace the feeling over logic. Han Feng obeyed her request. With his eyes now shut, he inquired what should happen next. That's when another man appeared, menacingly clutching the door. This enigmatic man flung the icy door open, focused on Han Feng's head. and slammed a blunt object with deadly force. Unfortunate Han Feng was caught unaware. His skull was shattered with closed eyes. It was a gory and savage spectacle. A vicious ambush painted the apartment entryway crimson. Hyona and the enigmatic man went inside the dwelling. She trembled and stammered, visibly shaken, that her accomplice would eliminate Han Feng. The man scoffed and said she was faking innocence because she understood this was the inevitable outcome. The world turned chaotic ages ago. One fewer person to sustain won't alter things. Forget about fixating on the savage assault. It's go time to check out this Hong Kong guy's stash. If they're lucky, they might gather enough provisions to last until help arrives. The disturbing thing was Han Feng didn't expire instantly. He was prone on the frigid ground, quivering in pain, as all the blood gushing from his head injury congealed immediately upon exiting. He wasn't sure what transpired, but he couldn't budge. Maybe it's his time. Maybe his end was near. He could finally understand losing existence. His last sight was the enigmatic man and wicked Hyona, canoodling near his lifeless form, had been caressing her in unimaginable ways, as he vowed to compensate her superb acting that enabled the entire scheme. As Han Feng's eyes shut permanently, the loathing for that heartless woman felt incredibly heavy. He pledged, if given another chance, he'd never be infatuated again. In the consuming void he fell into, Han Feng noticed tiny glimmers of light. It began as a minuscule spark, expanding into something larger and tangible. As its radiance intensified, Han Feng wondered what was occurring. He instinctively reached out. His skin was see-through like another being. The gentle light drew him in. After enduring the unrelenting chill of reality, could this be the road to paradise? But the aureate glow abruptly shifted to scarlet. What manner of heaven boasts this crimson hue? After being lured by the golden radiance and grasping for it, Han Feng, or a spectral form of his physique, felt his appendages being torn asunder, as if processed by a meat mincer. Fate consistently disfavors this fellow. The crimson light swiftly enveloped his entire form as he emitted a wretched shriek of pain. His ethereal frame crumbled piecemeal. The dark abyss was permeated with his dispersed essence, and Han Feng vanished, still sensing the torment of being pulverized and dismantled. Particle by particle, he roused in a cold perspiration. Shouting for dear life, the anguish was exceedingly authentic. He was enticed into shutting his eyes, whacked in the head for excessive lust, perished a dismal demise, awakened in a desolate emptiness, deceived into being ripped apart at an atomic scale. And now he's lost. He glanced around, and sunlight streamed through his terrace. His plush bed was spotless. The air felt crisp as it billowed his drapes. Han Feng was miles away from the harsh reality he'd grown accustomed to. It took him half an hour to process the bizarre events that had transpired. Over the last few hours, he used those 30 minutes, basking in the breathtaking vista of the neighborhood. Below his flat, Han Feng couldn't believe the sun was out again. He longed for its heat and radiance. He believed he'd never experienced this kind of solace and warmth again. He quickly looked at the date. It appeared to be the morning of June 28th. If he recalled correctly, the glacial apocalypse would commence on July 15th. He was meant to perish after the attack, but somehow he was sent back through time, 2 weeks before societal collapse. In essence, he's been resurrected with an unprecedented do-over. Besides the recollections he held from the past chronology, something's distinct this go-around. An oddity was brewing within him, and it may have materialized in his palms. Since his awakening, a crimson radiance has constantly enveloped his right hand. He attempted to brush it off, dismiss it, but nothing could erase it. It's painless, only warm. It appeared inert apart from the illumination, and he initially assumed it was a figment of his imagination. At the outset, Han Feng lingered, contemplating the occurrence on his terrace, until he began sneezing as he cleared his nostrils. He observed the crimson glow on his right hand inexplicably shift to emerald, then an alarming event unfolded. The hand, bathed in the verdant luminescence, commenced expanding, elongating, as though his skeletal structure, skin, and flesh were extending. Anybody would panic seeing their hands do that. Scared and bewildered, Han Feng rushed to his room and swiftly slammed the balcony door. He got inside before anything worse occurred. He was gasping for breath, but his hand appeared normal again. The emerald sheen remained, lingering and seemingly endless. Han Feng stared at it helplessly. Light beams emanated from his hand. Could science explain this, or rationalize such a bizarre occurrence? After the elongation outside, now it's contracting gradually. The green light seems unpredictable. It expands and contracts erratically, unlike the constant red one. But that's also puzzling. Settling on his sofa, Han Feng was suddenly hit by overwhelming fatigue. He hadn't done much besides hurrying back inside, but he felt depleted. It might relate to the emerald glow. Annoyed, he flailed his arms around, seeking any hint of what this truly was. Then it dawned on him. Wasn't this like the manhwa tales he adored? He instantly dashed to the kitchen and snatched his sharpest blade. In the manhwas he loved, the hero always begins their journey with a rebirth. Like them, perhaps he would acquire superhuman abilities. He decided to experiment by seizing the coolest item he could envision and striking a pose with it. After several minutes of anticipating a change, any alteration, Han Feng sheepishly scratched his head as the keen blade didn't respond to the radiance in his hand. He was preoccupied with determining if he possessed remarkable, extraordinary abilities, that he disregarded his weariness and his growling stomach. He's ravenous at this moment. Sadly for him, the past Han Feng, oblivious to the impending doom, was a slacker, with not a scrap of food in his refrigerator. This was dire. He had never experienced such hunger. If he doesn't consume something quickly, he'll likely collapse any minute. He glanced toward the living room, where a transparent container of soybean treats sat undisturbed. These cooked soybeans were merely remaining nibbles, acquired prior to the catastrophe. It's hardly a substantial dinner, but it will suffice temporarily. It should curb his appetite until he visits the grocery later. He picked up a cooked soybean, instinctively using his right hand, briefly, overlooking the peculiar green glow encompassing it. Han Feng was too famished to consider anything else. He popped the soybean in his mouth, hoping to get some nourishment. The moment the bean touched his tongue, a smoky burst erupted in his face. The resulting mist nearly enveloped his torso. To his astonishment, he was chewing on a bean sprout. It seemed the roasted soybean had germinated in his mouth. He felt the tendrils on his tongue, and the stem stretched outward. He extracted it, and the plant left an earthy aftertaste. Of all the strange occurrences he's experienced recently, this might rank among the strangest. He was about to enjoy some roasted soybeans, and then this happened. Furthermore, he no longer felt fatigued. It seemed that explosion on his face eliminated his hunger pangs. Glancing at his right hand, the green glow had disappeared as well. Perhaps this is all related to the soybean's fate. He picked a pod from the plant and inspected it, splitting the vibrant green shell. He verified it was a normal new sprout. Maybe this is the ability he fantasized about. Regardless of what this is, definitely a remarkable finding that needs further study. He can't investigate while concerned about starving. Imminently, he has more pressing matters, like gathering provisions before the apocalypse. For the first time in ages, as everyone knows, Han Feng left his residence to feel the sunlight and listen to birdsong. He could stroll among the lively throng. Downtown, occupied instead of sheltering inside. Dreading the chill, Han Feng pondered deeply as he journeyed to his endpoint. First things first, the crimson aura around his hand became emerald. The verdant light fluctuated, expanding and contracting his appendages, accelerating his pulse and inducing extreme fatigue. Upon contact with the soy snacks, it germinated into a complete plant. Observing his right hand filled with inquiries, he pondered what sort of ability was granted to him by an unknown entity. He resumed his leisurely strolls until a recognizable, melodious voice called his name. It once charmed him, but now ignited his fury. Han Feng didn't immediately notice and looked back to identify the caller. It was the wicked sorceress responsible for his brutal demise. Li Hyanad displayed a broad grin. Her flawless makeup concealed her vile nature. She inquired if Han Feng was also shopping. She utilized her masterful sorcery skills, looking as gorgeous as possible, remarking on the serendipity of it all, their chance encounter. In this location, Han Feng hasn't processed recent events, everything that transpired, but encountering Li Huna unexpectedly rekindles past bitterness. Li Huna was his dream girl until his demise. For 3 years straight, He was infatuated, striving for her happiness, fully aware of his insignificance, merely a backup in the friend zone. Not even a friend, just a walking ATM for years of devotion and financial support to the wrong person. Never anticipated she would cause his death. Before losing composure, Han Feng grounded himself to remain composed. It required all his self-control, thinking logically. Now's not the moment for vengeance. Not initially, at least. He must address the provisions issue, unless he desires to be wretched and famished in the glacial period once more. Li Huna approached and gestured near his face, inquiring why he was daydreaming. This hasn't occurred previously. Simply hearing her tone would make the pathetic fool faint. Han Feng suppressed his loathing for the sorceress and feigned a grin, as he expressed regret for being silent, and for her particularly stunning appearance today. She was so dazzling, he became momentarily captivated. That's more accurate. Li Huna giggled shyly and inquired, when he became so charming with his words. Her lips curved into a subtle confident smirk, believing she had this lad completely under her control. She aimed for a fatal blow, with the cutest stance imaginable. Li Hyona asked Han Feng to accompany her on a shopping trip, but they bumped into one another regardless. Han Feng had limited tolerance for her presence. Before his anger erupted, he simply departed and expressed regret that they would not be shopping together that day. Li Hyan was astonished. This was unexpected. She anticipated free items from a pitiful admirer. Heading the opposite way, Han Feng admired the girl's tactic. He would not be deceived. He would not be a walking wallet. He was wiser now. Thus, he proceeded directly to his desired destination. Walmart Shopping Center. This particular Walmart is the priciest and best supplied grocery store. In the Eastern District, it's comparable to Walmart. That brand's trademarked. Once the glacial period arrives, this location will be emptied instantly. In the prior timeline, no one discovered the perpetrator or method. Han Feng had commenced his buying spree and loaded a cart with merchandise. He must accumulate as much as feasible before civilization collapses beneath the extreme cold. He perused online discussions regarding a general disaster survival handbook, and it was unexpectedly beneficial. Browsing, he noted necessary items like nourishment, cold weather attire, medications, essential provisions, fuel, implements, vehicles, and even arms. Extensive preparation is required, yet he was eager to acquire provisions. That he overlooked a more crucial matter. His wallet's present funds were a paltry 15,000 U, roughly equivalent to a bit over 2,000 US dollars. How could he guarantee a secure and comfy existence in the frozen wasteland? With just this much, he'll need way more dough for all his necessities. Suddenly, a message alert appeared on his cell. A notification, possibly a divine sign to relax. The text was from a company named Money Jar Loans, celebrating his authorized loan approval. Up to 168,000 yuan, or roughly 23,000 US dollars. An idea clicked in his brain. No need to stress over finances. How could he overlook? The ease of tech had given him a limitless money exploit. Numerous lending apps exist, with simple loan approval requirements. For those needing cash fast, they're totally exploitative. Drowning in debt is irrelevant. He'll never repay them. Once the apocalypse truly begins. Downtown, a woman was furiously booting an empty soda can on the sidewalk. She's clearly bothered. It was Li Hyona. She seems quite unhappy. Her eyes were filled with pure venom, because today one of her admirers refused to accompany her shopping. When she was all dressed up to be pampered, she was incredibly irritated that Han Feng would just leave, without allowing her to drain his funds. Like a useless parasite, she mentally berated the guy for being a pitiful failure, who didn't even possess a vehicle. Li Huan swore to never treat that admirer kindly again. Her furious pace was disrupted by loud honking, emanating from a nearby approaching car. Intrigued, she looked back to investigate. It resembled a fresh truck from the showroom. It was still gleaming and luxurious. Han Feng rolled down the windows from the driver's side. He arrived to say hi to Hyona, as he coincidentally drove past her while she was taking a walk of shame through the shopping center. Seeing the new ride, Hyona's promise to always be mean to Han Feng has seemingly vanished from her thoughts. All she noticed were fresh leather seats and the aroma of money. Han Feng got out when questioned if the vehicle was his. He replied yes, mentioning he acquired it earlier. She approached the woman and fabricated a tale about how his father has been incredibly successful in American ventures. Therefore, he received funds to spend lavishly. He also said he just left the airport after taking his dad home. Lee Hyona's expression brightened. The sole reason for that would be the chance of becoming wealthy. So she inhaled deeply and prepared herself. For Han Feng, this is her second attempt today. She glanced down and began quivering slightly, aware that Han Feng escorted his affluent dad to the airport today. She started expressing regrets for requesting him to shop, unaware he had a packed agenda. Then the waterworks commenced. She began conjuring those tears flawlessly, while softly informing Han Feng of his prior coldness towards her. She believed he was abandoning a close companion. Han Feng grinned contentedly. This academy-level performance would have marvelously worked on the former him, but circumstances are altered. He perceived everything. This foolish girl was an expert. He instantly grasped her waist. Drawing her near, his other hand seized her chin, and they made eye contact. Lee Hyona was stunned that one of her admirers was so boldly assertive. Han Feng delivered a theatrical masterpiece, vowing to never abandon her. She's much too valuable for him to commit such a heartless act. For a brief moment, a subtle sly grin appeared on her lips, but she swiftly erased it. Resuming her genuine, innocent facade, she unleashed her strongest weapon. Lee Hyona confessed Han Feng held a unique place in her heart. She even extended an invitation for lunch and a film to become better acquainted. As she prepared to inquire about his response, Han Feng vanished like vapor. It was a flawless, inconspicuous retreat. Hyona was stunned. Her passionate declaration was aimed at thin air. Han Feng was already fiddling with the stacks of containers in his truck's cargo bed. He was jokingly lamenting about his numerous burdens and his demanding agenda. Visibly annoyed her attempt failed, Lee Hyona maintained her charming demeanor. As she inquired about his excessive purchases, he responded that this amount was trivial. He merely picked up a few items. He enjoys teasing the sorceress. Han Feng fabricated a story and eagerly informed her of a gift for the woman. To avoid being overly dramatic, Li Huan bid farewell and headed home. She expressed excitement for the present. Once she faced away from Han Feng, her supposed greatest admirer, a cunning grin emerged, pleased with her manipulation of her benefactor. Meanwhile, Han Feng amused himself by toying with the enchantress. Understanding this individual, he couldn't risk revealing his secret hoard of resources. These provisions were his key to apocalyptic survival. Lee Hyona would have to be patient. When the world finishes, Han Feng will ensure she receives her due. That enigmatic man who struck his head, his apprehension about the approaching, unavoidable societal downfall begins to thaw. Han Feng anticipates the future with excitement. The following day arrived June 29. Once more, July 15th will be the decisive day. It will be the commencement of the conclusion. Initially comes the substantial snowfall. Then the temperature will dramatically plunge down to -20 degrees Celsius rapidly. Throughout the subsequent month, temperatures will progressively decline daily, reaching minimums of up to -70 degrees Celsius. By then, the world would be enveloped in ice and snow, rendering venturing outside nearly impossible. Han Feng first secured his ample food provisions. Besides the vast quantity of stock, he also requires everything tightly packaged and sealed. He can't let the neighbors notice anything unusual. They can't know he's stockpiling massive amounts of food. This was exhausting labor. Some delicate items had to be transported at night. When nobody was around, Han Feng doesn't believe in anyone enough to seek assistance, so he must handle it alone. Once the catastrophic ice age commences, the power system will be incredibly shaky. That's where his latest acquisition excels. A robust generator, plus ample fuel to maintain its operation for a full year minimum. With electricity guaranteed, he must now ponder the deadly repercussions of the structure's heating system failing. He had to summon specialized technicians to alter his residence for separate warmth. Han Feng also acquired fortified doors and windows. Since he was already doing this, he required a designated area to hold all the provisions that he had accumulated, so he utilized a vacant bedroom for all the necessities. By the time he completed setting up everything recorded in his small survival guide, it was already the 14th of July, only 24 hours until the temperature drops and everything falls into disorder. Next on his agenda is the primary task he has been delaying due to apprehension. It's time to focus and truly examine his enigmatic skill. Han Feng prepared a homemade dinner while contemplating his existence. In the approaching glacial apocalypse, when circumstances become difficult, depending entirely on his accumulated provisions will be insufficient. But he possesses a potential solution. His talent for manipulating flora in a supernatural manner could be his sole chance for a lasting livelihood. The dish he made highlighted legumes as the central component. That's correct, the identical pulses he materialized from a lone baked tree. Utilizing his gift, he strained his mind and attempted numerous motions and potential catalysts, but the signals hadn't appeared yet. The activation is unpredictable. Discovering the right catalyst is practically impossible. Now it's time for a daring taste experiment. He must ensure the food materialized by his powers is safe to eat. Who knew sampling beans could be so anxiety-inducing? Han Fan consumed half the dish of beans without any noticeable issues. Even the soy beverage aced the flavor and well-being check. While munching on his midday meal, the realization that his skill could generate edible nourishment was revolutionary at the very least. This confirmed he possesses the potential to hypothetically manifest food. The subsequent stage is tougher and relies more on trial and failure. He must determine how to utilize the crimson and emerald beams and summon them at his discretion. Thus far, he has solely tested it on legumes. But what might occur if he applied it to different items? Unveiling his freshly replenished refrigerator, Han Feng strengthened his determination to conduct trials and ascertain if his talent would function with other flora as well. The trial run lasted from noon until sunset. Han Feng was unaware as he lost consciousness mid-experiment. As his eyes fluttered open, he realized he was clutching something in his right hand, a green veggie, a giant broccoli rising from the ground. He ignored the chaos in his kitchen. As his head throbbed, a pounding sensation inside his skull. He must remember this feeling. His power severely strains mind and body, and its use is limited. To avoid fainting and waking with migraines, after rising, he quickly ate a spoonful of beans to recharge. He may have overexerted himself, but at least he discovered something crucial about his strange gift. Hours prior to losing consciousness, he meticulously organized a varied assortment of produce on the kitchen floor. He attempted to utilize his ability on several of them. After successfully triggering the emerald light, certain root vegetables like potatoes were completely unresponsive to his verdant light for reasons unknown. But not every item was a failure. Some crops developed from seeds into fully grown plants. Wheat was among those like the soybean stalks, and some neither remained unchanged nor matured completely. They simply detonated in his hands like miniature explosives. It was a startling incident that caught Han Feng unaware. Following the detonations, the plants transformed into a material resembling coal, but remarkably lightweight. This outcome was certainly unforeseen. Fortunately, he discovered a practical application for these non-edible black materials. They function as fuel for heating similar to coal, when combined in a receptacle and ignited. Originating from a timeline where warmth was a rarity, Han Feng would readily accept these tiny spheres of heat, no longer concerned about keeping warm in the hereafter. Following a series of detonations, he attempted numerous times and faltered in most. He continued tossing those dark orbs into the pail individually. When he encountered some purchased grains, he opted for a more contemplative posture while compelling himself to concentrate on regulating his respiration. Following several minutes of intense focus that made him perspire profusely, he achieved the most notable breakthrough in this trial. A colossal broccoli materialized in his hand. Before his vision blurred and he lost consciousness, he noted the triumph. Frequency of this technique was far too arbitrary. Then he collapsed. Fortunately, he was already seated on the tiles, so the tumble wasn't too severe. Now he's conscious and feeling energetic. He fiddled with the broccoli while pondering deeply, yet still unable to discern any logic to this skill. But he can't surrender. There must be some rationale behind this power's mechanism. Numerous mysteries remain, but he achieved some respectable advancement today. At present, he possesses some comprehension of the illumination activation prerequisites, an unexpected discovery. The secret to unlocking the unusual power resides within his own mind. He simply needs to enter a contemplative state. His technique involves envisioning himself unclothed in nature, liberated from societal restrictions, completely bare in his mental sanctuary. He treads barefoot on the earth, his spirit directly touching the life-giving soil. Sunlight warms his skin as nature harmonizes around him. Like Adam in paradise, his being is one with nature, a tranquil unity of all living things. Upon reaching this state, he gradually opens his eyes, and a familiar emerald radiance emerges. Once more, this talent is directly linked to his mind. Building on this idea, he could readily summon the verdant light. Now finished with the low-yield plant specimens, let's proceed to a new subject. The objective of the next trial would be various flesh. This go-around he gradually lifted his right hand, enveloped in emerald luminescence, toward a succulent piece of flesh. He kind of figured, but it's still a bummer there's zero response. Perhaps the verdant glow only affects flora. Figuring a gentle touch might be useless, Han Feng clutched the flesh and squeezed tight, hoping his right hand would do its thing. After several minutes, he had to admit nothing happened. Disappointment filled his weary eyes. Then he recalled the feeling during meditation. In a daze, he sensed two separate hues, crimson and emerald, throughout the trials. He hadn't used the scarlet one, understanding his power's main function. He just needs to focus on drawing out the crimson from his mind while gripping the flesh. He shut his eyes, seeking the other skill, resting inactive within him. Moments later, a flicker of crimson light emerged on his right hand. With that first glimmer, the radiance quickly enveloped his hand. Unexpectedly, it also encompassed the flesh. It seemed to be causing a fizzing response. At the meat's surface, after a brief period of intense focus, Han Feng opened his eyes to a foul mass of solidified, deep red goo that appeared to originate from hell. As the crimson light diminished, he instantly discarded the repulsive object. Out of pure revulsion, you would certainly do the same in his place. Recognizing that this deformed goo might offer valuable clues, Han Feng stooped to examine it. He prodded the substance, and it was slightly soft. So this is how flesh reacts to the crimson light. It may appear disgusting, but the consistency and general sensation suggest the possibility that the flesh was cooked. Is this the extent of the crimson light's power? Warming things up, ovens and skillets do the same, and they make tastier dishes than. Whatever this is, Han Feng doubts that's all there is. Using his mind to activate his skills, a considerable amount, he grasped his abilities more profoundly. To explain the crimson sensation, it felt like a decomposition process. His next meat trial appeared much improved. But in that scenario, grasping the principles of these two lights might be simpler than anticipated. He took some soybeans from his stash and clenched them tightly in his right hand. In his left hand was the crimson light and the seared meat. If the emerald light signifies material progression, then the crimson light is the reverse, which would be dissolution. He's already exploring perplexing notions. What if he merged the green light, bean manipulation, and the red light, meat manipulation? The outcome was a greater response than anticipated. The fusion created an intense, luminous glow between his hands. When the radiance faded, his meat had grown considerably. The meat was substantially enlarged. Where did the soybeans in his right hand vanish? Did the two objects combine, yielding this enormous piece? Han Feng carefully examined the large meat. Regardless of perspective, it's undeniably remarkable. It looks, feels, and smells identical to genuine meat, but somehow fresher. Feeling more assured, he's improving with his superpower ability. He opted for further experimentation after a few hours. He returned to the starting point. One more time, his kitchen floor was covered in burnt scraps of food. He threw a fit. Every attempt was a total flop. Releasing all that frustration, Han Feng sat upright and inhaled deeply. Hell temporarily halted the tests. He can take his time to understand its complexities. Eventually, it was a fruitful day, despite its burnt ending. Han Feng envisions the possibilities. If he conquers this enigmatic force, undoubtedly, with limitless means he would reign supreme atop this post-apocalyptic society. It's his ambition to bolster his image. Regarding strength, he overlooked a crucial survival element. Sustenance alone won't suffice. He'll be totally exposed with all these treasures. If he lacks a suitable weapon for protection, he quickly gathered the scattered harvests from his floor. He must promptly locate a weapon. before the temperature plummets. Gazing out the window, it appears like the beginning of the end times. Have commenced, snow descends from the heavens. The public may assume it's a normal snowy night, but unlike the last timeline, it's truly occurring. The downfall of modern society is starting. Venturing outside, Han Fun worries that the temperature will plunge to 45 below this week. He requires a firearm urgently, but purchasing one here is forbidden, and he has no ties to the underworld. Then he heard a loudmouth shouting and bragging about being a construction worker, with millions riding on each endeavor. The guy was boasting to a stranger that he knows the notorious Old Wong from Shanghai Lida Corporation. They're as thick as thieves. Han Fun believes he's encountered this goon before, an idiot with a loud fashion sense, decked out in jewelry of dubious origin and flashy streetwear. A dude who offers everyone smokes, for whatever reason in this vicinity. Folks call this peroxide blonde, cigarette fiend Homeless Joe. Homeless Joe's actual name is Lee. He prefers to be called Brother Lee, and he resides in Han Feng's neighborhood. He's known to manage construction gigs and is acquainted with everyone locally. If you give him some cigs, he'll only take Wazi. He wants smoke other brands. Other brands give him a hacking cough. He's always assisting his older brother with jobs and enjoys hitting the sauna. This guy is a jobless loser, but he always pretends to be occupied. You often spot him strolling while on the phone, yelling about million-dollar agreements, as if he wants everyone to know he's a big shot. The dude is a deadbeat, but Han Feng sees potential. Vagrant. Joe has the right links to acquire what he desperately wants, so he went to the hoodlum, calling him Brother Lee, and saying it's been ages since their last encounter. Han Feng gestured with an uneasy grin, unsure of the guy's reaction. Brother Lee irritably inquired if they were acquainted. As he drew near, younger than Lee, he presented himself as Xiaohan. Like saying, little man, he insisted they met some time ago. My memory must be failing. The thug grumbled about being overloaded with tasks recently. His forgetfulness is understandable, but he was quite open to conversation. Han Fun was excessively wary. As he was about to request something unlawful, he scanned his surroundings, glancing around to ensure privacy for his upcoming words. Then he approached Brother Lee and plainly asked for the firearm needed for protection in the near future. Lee startled and inquired about the gun's purpose. He wasn't one to involve regular folks in risky business. Han Fun shoved the thug's suspicious Louis Vuitton bag away and claimed Brother Lee misunderstood everything. He was simply asking about weapons for protection due to a nasty personal conflict. So, Han Feng began fabricating a lie. He said, one day biking to work as usual, he encountered an elderly man hawking loogies all over the bike path. It was disgusting, and even worse, the breeze blew a nasty glob of spit directly onto Han Feng's face while he was minding his business. Infuriated by the vile old man, Han Feng tossed his bike aside and confronted the geezer. What did the jerk do? The idiot spat on him again. As he vented his frustrations, he reached his breaking point and delivered some vigilante justice to the repulsive geezer. He gave the fella a proper thrashing in the street, with onlookers observing from the periphery. As the elder departed with shredded garments and a battered face, the jerk vowed revenge on Han Feng for this indignity the following day. That senior citizen was mended and lying in wait for Han Feng on his customary cycling path. This instance he brought some toughs. They roughed up Han Feng severely and menaced to repeat it if they spotted him again. His attire was disheveled, his visage was contused, and his physique was injured. He had never felt so ashamed. That's why he desires a weapon for protection. That's the condensed account. That's the tale he fabricated instantly, and it appears it was quite convincing. Brother Lee was seething, picturing the unpleasant, cranky geezer hawking loogies at and striking Han Feng. Such barbaric conduct is unacceptable. That's beside the point in Han Feng's tale. But he's making progress. Brother Lee patted his back and guaranteed this revenge would be handled. He promised Han Feng our buddy was taken care of. He'll ring his older brother right away, and they'll retrieve that firearm. Han Feng started questioning his choice of talking tough to this fella. Brother Lee asked him to head to the terminal and catch the bus, claiming his Panamera was at the mechanic, preventing him from driving to HQ. Han Feng said getting there wasn't an issue. His vehicle was parked nearby. The new ride instantly grabbed the attention of this poser, loafer during the trip to his elder sibling. Brother Lee couldn't stop babbling about Han Feng's lavish lifestyle and inquired about the price of the new vehicle. It was roughly 700,000 in borrowed funds, as he nonchalantly provided directions to the next left turn. To arrive at the supposed workplace, Brother Lee continued taking selfies, relaxing in the fresh leather seating. His social media username was Handsome, Zesty Dude, and tonight's upload was a photo of his foolish face with a comment, griping about the uncomfortable firmness of his SUV seat due to its newness. They arrived at a rundown area of town. Some intimidating men were gathered outside, grousing about the awful weather. It's understandable, though. It transitioned abruptly from summer to brutal winter. Noticing some sharp-looking wheels arrive, all eyes turned to the person emerging from the vehicle. Recognizing Li Zi, they swarmed him, inquiring what's happening. Li informed them he had matters to discuss with Mr. Liu. The other goons presumed the new Tiger SUV was Li's and pestered him about its cost. Li didn't refute it. He even bragged he paid 700 grand. Han Feng remained calm, boastfully claiming ownership. With the true owner present is quite a provocation. Audacious act upon entering the place. The individual known as Boss Liu, a tough-looking gangster, appeared, annoyed by Big Mouth Li's late-night intrusion. Brother Li became noticeably subdued before the boss, even respectfully offering cigarettes. The big man has no time for pleasantries. He's occupied. Brother Li presented their associate, Han Feng, a purchaser of a unique item. A firearm kingpin. Liu questioned if he heard correctly. Once the head honcho eyed him, Han Feng became petrified. He was uncertain of the repercussions of a misstep or an inaccurate utterance. Boss Liu simply observed him, cigarette between his lips, seemingly analyzing him thoroughly. Then the leader grinned. He felt let down that Han Feng desired a measly gun when he anticipated something more captivating. He motioned to a subordinate Qingzi. The underling understood immediately and searched his coat. He threw a firearm on the surface, and Boss Liu stated a cost. 6,000 for the pistol, easily hidden and dependable. Han Feng politely declined, as he contemplated something lengthier and larger. He didn't want a small caliber weapon. He desired something requiring an aiming device. Boss Li's face went somber as he gazed intensely at Han Feng. Our kid might have inadvertently stepped over the bounds. He instantly went silent, as if he had bitten his tongue. The large man began shouting about how ludicrous it was to request a darn sniper rifle, as if it were trivial. He's operating a low-key enterprise here. This isn't some blasted shopping center where you browse and select your desired illicit goods. Boss Li's ultimate proposition is the handgun on the counter. Accept it or decline it. Brother Li had to intervene and try to pacify the boss. His method of persuading the big man to pay attention was to fabricate a narrative for Han Feng himself, a concocted tale supposedly occurring 5 years prior, concerning Han Feng's fictitious spouse. Li is quite a loquacious, yet gifted narrator. Beneath the constant descent of snow, the boss heard his falsehoods until the very conclusion. The tale must have been remarkable. Boss Liu was so furious he nearly broke the table. He reiterated how vile those who had harmed Han Feng were. Supposedly Han Feng had 3 children with a fictitious spouse, but none were actually his. Han Feng simply stood there and accepted all the falsehoods, even for a guy called Homeless Joe. This outlandish tale was unbelievable, but it succeeded. Boss Liu vouchsafed personally that Han Feng would receive his sniper rifle ASAP. He vowed to make it occur himself. It could require a couple of days, though. Again, the goons Changzi would handle everything. Boss Liu desired something semi-automatic with plentiful ammunition, so Han Feng could obtain what he required. Surprisingly, Brother Li truly delivered. The large man also gave Han Feng the pistol. He wished to provide it gratis, a present between men. Han Feng was stunned. The fabricated story was excellent. The boss developed a unique connection with him. With that handled, the man resumed his call to address his other, more urgent matters before departing. Han Feng wished to reciprocate the kindness. He mentioned a friend, employed by the government, informed him about impending purchase restrictions on supplies due to unusual weather. Supply limits would soon be in effect due to the erratic climate, advising to stockpile beforehand. Observing the youth's earnest expression, as if he possessed genuine knowledge, Boss Lu felt compelled to heed the advice. He acknowledged understandingly. Thus, Brother Li and Han Feng departed the city's hidden core. Having acquired a weapon on their return journey, Li boasted incessantly about his masterful handling of affairs. Everything proceeded flawlessly with his elder sibling, the head honcho, in good spirits. They could ask that fella for a big gun and he'd agree. Han Feng wanted to show gratitude to the tough guy by getting him some smokes. Brother Li tried to be modest and maintained that he only wanted to lend a hand, but he would happily accept 7 or 8 packs of his favorite Huazi cigarettes. He even vowed to treat Han Feng to a sauna trip after he got compensated for his supposed endeavor. Our guy was already contemplating his subsequent course of action. Provisions are acquired and the armament is procured. He should be prepared for the initial phase of the apocalypse. At the minimum, he could concentrate on honing his skills. Completely resolving the sustenance issue would significantly boost his long-term survival prospects. He was so engrossed in his thoughts while strolling that he missed an icy patch on the ground and tumbled. Han Feng was so preoccupied with staying alive that he neglected to adhere to a cardinal rule. In the impending glacial epoch, avoid harm. He took a nasty spill. His leg likely bore the brunt of the fall and was greatly injured. Brother Li was clueless as he rushed to his new friend's side. This is dire from the intense agony and the clumsy fall. There was a strong chance his leg was fractured. He nervously removed his car keys, gave them to Brother Li, and asked to be driven to the closest hospital immediately. Li simply scratched his head and confessed he lacked a driver's permit, claiming he couldn't operate a vehicle without one. But it's clear this guy just can't drive at all. At least he didn't abandon Han Feng on the ground to suffer from a broken leg. He used his shoulders to help Han Feng up, but he labored intensely. They wouldn't survive to the hospital like this. So Han Feng summoned a taxi he had to fund. Because Li was penniless, even the hospital, a crucial institution, began icing over beneath the strengthening blizzard. In the infirmary, an individual named Guillaume was responsible for the night shift. On this snowy evening, the snow was intensifying, and the streets were becoming deeply covered. Lead Nurse Jean had just commenced her night shift, but calls from the corridor were already pouring in. As the ER was critically understaffed, the attractive nurse had no alternative but to assist. After receiving an X-ray at the medical facility, it was verified that he had indeed fractured his leg. The physician clarified that there was a clean break on his right tibia. It would be simple to reset, but had require an hour of monitoring before departing with his medication. This mishap couldn't have occurred at a less opportune moment. It had to transpire before the apocalypse fully commenced. While examining his X-ray findings, Han Feng lamented his recklessness. Brother Li joined him for much of the procedure, but the guy had to split. He had some business to attend to. He's a true friend, and he gave Han Feng his digits in case he required further assistance. Now by himself in the hospital waiting area, Han Feng let out a big sigh. He pondered how he could have made such a foolish error. At this critical juncture, observing the surrounding disorder was nerve-wracking. The hospital was rapidly overwhelmed with injured individuals, casualties of mishaps from the unexpected snowstorm, and swiftly dropping degrees. Makeshift beds filled the corridors, a somber indication of the deteriorating climate outside. Personally, he just wanted his prescriptions and to depart this location swiftly, before the streets became impassable. Fortunately, his downtime wouldn't be dull, because a divine beauty had entered his field of vision. Head Nurse Jean arrived to reinforce the shorthanded ER. The initial bed she examined held a patient with severe injuries. Her next stop was patient room 5, where a patient's injuries had been treated. Fortunately, the vital signs were steady. Patient 5 required another sugar dose in 10 minutes. She informed the nurse if the patient's pulse fell below 80, adrenaline should be given right away. During the head nurse's rounds, Han Feng couldn't stop looking at her. She was remarkable, a lead nurse so young, a once-in-a-generation prodigy. He also noticed how she handled various patients. She was compassionate and highly capable, a shining light in a bleak setting. Plus, she was stunningly gorgeous, working the busy overnight shift. But her smile remained constant, truly an angelic presence. He was completely captivated. His gaze strayed to inappropriate places. Han Feng swiftly glanced away respectfully, but head nurse Jean was completely oblivious to her environment. A total space cadet all of a sudden, the elderly gentleman beside him began trying to get the attention of the attractive head nurse. She wasn't obligated to care for patients then, beyond her usual checks, but she answered the call cheerfully. Head nurse Jean courteously excused herself to the old man and inquired if she could return shortly to assist, because she still had to deliver immediate treatment to others. To compensate for the lack of personnel, the old man grumbled that his back was extremely painful. He elaborated that the back pain had intensified recently and desired the head nurse to examine it to determine the source. Truthfully, this creep was a lecherous man attempting to record under her skirt, unaware of his true intentions. Jean simply smiled and apologized again, stating that for such spinal issues, an X-ray might be necessary to be certain. The creepy old man got fresh, insisting she glance at his supposed injury. The jerk even rose to paw at the sweet nurse, totally inappropriate and in her usual ditzy way. Guillaume just giggled, being naturally sensitive. For spinal issues, it's best to await the doctor's assessment. The lek persisted, his fingers inching down from her hips. This vile behavior would have gone on if it hadn't been interrupted. A darn crutch whacked the old geezer, inflicting genuine backache, sending his mobile flying. Always the compassionate caregiver, Jean checked on the old guy. Luckily, Han Fane rescued her, sheepishly saying sorry for his airborne crutch. Being his first time on one, he stooped and grabbed the guy's cell, openly wondering if it was damaged. Just as he was going to reach for it, the weirdo began perspiring anxiously and yelling at him to keep away from the device. Han Feng ignored him and proceeded to the other side of the area, disrupted his dressing, and refused to let this darn scumbag escape after committing such a vile act. The moment he accessed the phone, his assumptions were confirmed. He gazed directly at the scoundrel. A lethal glare could have ended the old man's life. The evidence was displayed on the main screen. This creep had audacity, recording a diligent nurse's skirt and even molesting her. There's no justification for Han Fun not to alert security and have them take the jerk to a prison where inmates enjoy dealing with perverts. Han Fun would hold onto the phone, and the following time he encountered this old creep, he vowed to destroy his pathetic and wretched existence. The geezer knew he had no alternative but to escape and never reappear near this location, and it enraged him the moment he could. He rose from the hospital floor and dashed out, as if his survival was at stake. In the meantime, head nurse Jian was simply perplexed regarding how someone lamenting about intense back pain could sprint so rapidly. Han Feng was astonished to witness firsthand the most ridiculously gullible individual he had encountered. He opted to reveal what the old codger was doing with the cell, recording up her dress, judging by her response. She genuinely didn't detect anything amiss happening. Han Feng gave her the phone containing the recording, so she could choose whether to delete it or alert the authorities. He further advised her to exercise more caution, so creeps like that wouldn't exploit her generosity. She beamed with the radiance of countless stars, inquired about Han Feng's leg injury. The rush from apprehending that creep must have masked the ache from his fractured leg. But now that it was resolved, the pain surged back, and he yelled in anguish. Luckily, head nurse Jean was a pro at fixing these kinds of wounds, and swiftly reset the cast. She asked him if it still ached. Han Fun expressed gratitude for her fixing his fractured leg, and now there was no pain. In that instant, it felt like they were alone in the full room. Gideon reciprocated the thanks, as she vowed to never allow such villains to harm her again. She would strike them hard from now on. Han Feng simply wanted her to be more mindful, because she was letting his injured leg and foot touch her throw pillows. It appeared she had grasped nothing. She remained as oblivious as always. While Han Feng's mind was adrift, another nurse summoned Guillaume, as her assistance was required in the ER. Before resuming her duties, the kind head nurse reminded him to remember to return next week for a leg checkup. Han Feng agreed, but planning ahead was impractical. He simply smiled powerlessly, for only he understood the world's true state. He grabbed the crutch used against the creep and hobbled out of the hospital. Han Feng resigned himself to never seeing her again. The following day arrived. The blizzard persisted. It had intensified. It had effectively halted all infrastructure and services, making venturing outside perilous. Morning news urgent weather alerts flooded in regarding. Over the next day, all national areas would face intense snow and a rapid temperature plunge. Unusual accounts from foreign reporters revealed temperatures were diving globally. Dubai, Egypt, the Amazon rainforest, and locations where this shouldn't be occurring were finding their terrain buried under deep snow cover. The country's top minds, along with professionals from 46 nations, were hurrying to the UN to address the reason for the strange weather. All channels repeated that. Specialists claimed this extreme cold wouldn't linger. They always concluded broadcasts with a public advisory to heed hazard warnings and comply with local government directives. They constantly urged people to stay composed, don't spread or accept baseless gossip, and avoid stockpiling goods and frantic purchasing, as the calamity would quickly pass. Warm, comfy, and enjoying wine in his decorated residence, Han Feng scared. The authorities and news outlets just kept outright deceiving, giving the populace nonsense to preserve stability. If he hadn't perished and revived already, he might even trust them, but this instance was unique. He was completely ready for everything approaching. Provisions were totally amassed. The dwelling was fortified and the warmth system was operating perfectly. He had been exceptionally prepared, that there was zero to fret over for the near term. His mobile device began vibrating constantly, with communications from the pleasant residence inhabitants. Community forum debating the unusual climate and how the snowfall was already rendering the streets impassable. Everyone was obviously unaware of what was transpiring, except for the individual known as Enigma. This entity commanded everyone's notice to notify them that the blizzard wasn't due to typical climate conditions, but by an anomaly within the planet itself. Enigma declared that all should listen to his pronouncements, as the glacial epic cataclysm was nearing devastation. Nobody was more astonished after reviewing those communications than Han Fan. Who is this Enigma, and how do they possess knowledge of the apocalypse? Well, discover more if you follow and subscribe.